Just like to offer a big shout out to Touchdown Digital, the leaders in web design and construction, the sponsor of this week's video. Well, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Glenn Salmon and you're watching Sniper Photography. Now today, as the title suggests, I want to talk to you about using foreground element or foreground elements in your images, in your photography, especially when it comes to landscape photography. Now, I love shooting ultra wide to wide. In other words, I use lenses between 14mm and 16mm up to about 24mm. But I really love the 16 to 14 range. I have two lenses that cover that. I have a 14mm ultra wide fixed focal length, and then I have the Canon 16 to 35, which is a fantastic lens, and I'm always between the 16 to 24. But I do use the ultra wide 14mm lens when I really want to exaggerate the foreground and by getting close. And you'll see some of the images here as I put up as I'm talking to you. And the reason why I think it's important that you include foreground element in your images is because a lot of people tend to just take the big vista, which is okay, but when somebody looks at your image, the human eye has this ability to search between the eye and the brain. So you really need to put something in the foreground, and keeping in mind this all goes hand in hand with creating a three-dimensional image, even though our camera sees it in two-dimensional, but the scene is three-dimensional. So it's a combination of layers, but you've got to start somewhere, and the somewhere is in the foreground. So I'll put a couple of images up and I'll show you what I do and why I do it, and why it's important that I think it's important that you really, when you walk into the landscape, have a good look around and see if there's any foreground element in the potential image. This is all about building layers, but foreground, it's got to start there because you've got foreground, midground, background. So I'll put this first one up. This was taken in Alaska in 2022. This is at a place called Homer. It's almost the farthest point in Alaska. A very cold place, but photographic wise, incredible. I pulled up in the motorhome here and I was waiting for the light to change, and it was late afternoon. And as you can see, there's this driftwood just been washed up with the tides. And I thought, well, this is going to make a great foreground element. So by including the big driftwood there in this image, it breaks up the scene, because if you cover that with your hand, all you've got is just this open beach, open sky sort of affair, which in essence is okay. But when you look at that, I want you to look at it, and where does your eye start? Your eye starts at the bottom of the frame, a little bit to the left, and then you go through the driftwood up to the beach and sky. So that's why I took that shot, because the driftwood is doing the talking of the image. I'll say that again, the driftwood there is doing the talking of the image. I'll show you another one which was taken in Canada, and it was at Whistler actually. Where I stayed, there was like a waterfall and some really nice opportunities here. As you can see here in this one, I included a lot of the rock and foreground, and I really like this image. I actually printed this one out. All the rocks are the foreground element. You've got the midground where the water just comes over, and then you've got the background of the waterfall itself. So as you can see, by creating the foreground element there with the rocks, you've built a stage. Okay, so that is a three-dimensional image taken by the camera, but knowing how to incorporate all the elements of the image, that's another thing you must remember in creating or incorporating the elements into your image to build that scene. So as you can see, there's reasons why I do this. We'll go to a local place now. This one here, this one was shot with the ultra wide 14mm. I like it. When I first took this image, I thought, oh, it's a bit ridiculous. But the more I looked at it, the more I really liked it. So if you have a look at this one, you'll see there's a tree branch that it's fallen on the ground. But if you have a look to the far right of this tree branch, I was about 20 centimetres away from the tip of that timber. And using the ultra wide, it just super enhances the foreground. So that's a different way of doing it, excuse me, with a ultra wide angle lens, by getting very close to your subject, because you will have foreground. However, there's a bit of a trap with using ultra wide angle lenses. When I took this shot, if I had risen the camera like that but knelt down, I would have pushed the background further out, and you don't want that. So by angling the camera down with the ultra 14mm, I managed to draw the background in. This is all about getting out there and experimenting. There's no right or wrong with this, but when you nail it like this, you sit back and think, that's pretty good. I like what I've achieved there, and that's the most important part of this, really. So with including the foreground, you're looking at, look, it could be anything, but with landscape, you're looking at rocks, water, fallen down branches and trees, reeds, flowers. Well, let's go to this one here. This one was taken about 8 weeks ago in Canada. Now, I actually printed this one out, and I'm very happy with this one. This was in the middle of the day because we were running late, and there was a lot of people here, so I really didn't have much of an opportunity to really sit down and work this out. So I said to my lovely wife, who's very patient, I said, I'm going for a walk. And I walked for about 2 kilometres around this lake and found this scene here. Now, as you can see with this one, you've got the reeds, you've got the 2 reeds that come up like that, and that is actually a natural frame of the glacier in the background, but I've included all that foreground. So that actually tells you, pardon the pun, a picture that tells you a story. So by looking at these foreground elements, you're bringing the viewer into the scene. As I said, there's nothing worse than showing somebody a photo and they're looking at it and they're trying to, where do I focus my eye on this? What am I looking at? But by including a foreground element, you create that, it's not an illusion, but it's something for them to gravitate to and then work through the image. This next one, this is a local one. This was taken in Somersby Falls, which is in New South Wales, in a place near Gosford. A really nice scene. It's a place that's photographed millions of times throughout the year, especially when it rains. Nice location, easy to get to. You'll see a big rock down here at the base. Now, if you cover that up, you really just got the waterfall and the trees, but by having the big rock in the foreground, and I didn't put that rock here, I could never pick it up, it was there. So I focused 3/4 of the way in, and that gives me a really strong foreground element at Somersby Falls. So you're probably understanding now why it's important to include all this foreground elements or things or whatever you want to call it, because you're thinking about building an image. Here's another one. This is another one of a waterfall here. This was in Sydney, right in the heart of Sydney, or northwestern Sydney, and this is called Blacker Falls, I think. It's near Carlingford, would you believe, in between houses. How I found it, I do not know. I just stumbled upon it. But once again, as you can see, I've got all the grass and the reeds at the bottom of the frame, and then you lead the viewer into the image. So once again, that's a 3D scene captured by 2D in the camera, but by incorporating foreground element, you've created a 3D image. So it's all about giving the viewer something to look at. Okay, one more here, I think. Yes, this one here. This one's very, very interesting. This was in Alaska in 2022. Once again, I included a big foreground rock here. And once again, if you cover that up with your finger or your hand, all you've got is this massive open water space with the mountains in the background. Once again, okay, it looks all right. But by having a pinpoint where people can view the image from looking at that rock, and then they look up through the image. They're going through the layers of the image. This is what you've got to think about. This was taken with a 24mm tilt shift lens for great depth of field. And would you believe this image was shot at f4? f4, can you believe it? Because the tilt shift lens, that's how they work. You can open the lens right up and still get incredible depth of field. But once again, used foreground element. So that's probably why I shoot foreground. It just builds the image. Here's another one here. Where is that one? This one here, once again, this was in Zion about 6 weeks ago in the United States. This fallen timber, lots of timber everywhere over there. Once again, that is almost like a leading line from the foreground. You follow the fallen branch up to the rock, then into the cavern over the right hand side. So to wrap this up, I think you need to really, when you go into a scene, stop and look. Take your time. There's no rush. I see far too many people racing to the scene. They set up their tripod, camera ready to go, and then that's it. And I think they're letting themselves down by doing that. I've been in locations where people have done that, and I've actually stopped doing what I'm doing and gone up to them and introduced myself to them, because I love talking to people. And I say, look, why don't you try this? Turn the camera off. And they look at me rather strange. I said, look around. Look down at your feet. Okay, look down at the feet. Look in front of you. What have you got? Oh, I've got a few rocks and that. Well, why don't we lower the tripod down, get down low, and shoot through the scene? And when they do that and they look at the image in the back of the camera, they go, oh, thanks, man. Thanks very much. I didn't know I could do that. This is very simple. This isn't rocket science. So you just need to, when you get to your location, don't set up everything. Put your camera bag down, don't set up your tripod, don't even get your camera out, and look around the scene and look for foreground element. Because if you can create an image with a good strong foreground, right, you're on your way to becoming a very good photographer, I can tell you, because I've been shooting landscapes for a long time and I've always included foreground element in most of them. Some of them are overdone by a few people, but by being specific with what you want to do with your foreground, then build that shot, let the environment, let the landscape come to you, and then look at your shot and then take it. So I'd like to know what you think about this one. It's raining here today. I was going to go out, but I've got a few things I've got to do here at home, so unfortunately won't be out today. But what I am planning on doing, the next video will be out on site, and I will be taking live demonstrations on how to shoot foreground while I'm out in the landscape. So keep an eye out for that one. For the new subscribers, I much appreciate it. Thank you for joining this channel. I try and bring it to you at least once a week. Health-wise, I'm doing okay now, thank God. And thank you for the nice messages as well that I received from the last video explaining why I hadn't made any videos for some time. But back on board now and going great guns. So that's it for another episode of Sniper Photography. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please put your comments down below. I love reading them and I always get back to you. So until then, my name's Glenn Summer. You've been watching Sniper Photography, and as I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, keep shooting and keep smiling. Bye for now.